From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Issues surrounding transgender health care take center stage in the Montana legislature.
The truth is that this bill prohibits health care that is evidence-based, best practice health care.
Plus, this is one of the unforgettable sights from last summer's flooding. But when will Stillwater Mine Road be repaired?
We're going to try to help those folks out as much as we can while we're doing the job.
And wish granted, a Montana boy will explore the outdoors like he never has before. Good morning and welcome to Montana This Morning on this Tuesday, March 21st. Thanks for being with us. The Billings police chief is praising his officers for keeping their cool during the weekend standoff in the Heights. The woman accused of shooting a 13-year department veteran during this incident is now behind bars. Q2's Haley Monaco tells us how the injured officer is doing and has details on how law enforcement finally got the woman into custody.
Police are saying they used controlled demolition as one tactic in the 14-hour standoff that occurred Saturday. Now, controlled demolition is exactly what it sounds. They ripped off sides of Mary White Crane's trailer to try and find her as she had barricaded herself during the standoff.
What was problematic is that she had barricaded herself.
Billings Police Chief Rich St. John went in depth Monday.
A refrigerator was in the middle here. Made it very difficult for officers to see.
Breaking down the timeline and events that took place on Birch Lane between 57-year-old Mary White Crane and multiple law enforcement agencies. St. John confirmed 13-year police vet Mike Urena was the officer shot early on in the standoff.
The shot penetrated a ballistic shield carried by the lead officer and struck him just below the body armor and in his lower abdomen.
He was likely struck with a high-speed round from one of multiple firearms found inside the residence.
On scene were two shotguns, a 12 and a 20 gauge, and slug rounds.
Urena was in stable condition at a local hospital as of Monday afternoon. After multiple failed negotiation attempts trying to use family members to speak with White Crane, law enforcement turned off water and power to the entire neighborhood, and then tore into White Crane's home from multiple sides to be able to see her, a tactic St. John says they've used at least 3 times before.
And essentially what you're doing when you have barricaded subjects is you start tearing their barricade apart. More times than not, when their barricade is gone, they give up.
Once White Crane's barricades were down, police used help from the Billings Fire Department and sprayed a high-powered hose into the home, ultimately leading to her surrender.
We're here to preserve life, property secondary. And unfortunately, you have one individual that held a neighborhood hostage for many hours.
Chief St. John says things could have ended differently if law enforcement wanted them to, especially with emotions running high after an officer was wounded. But he was proud of his staff for putting life above all, no matter how long that took.
It's because of the extraordinary efforts we're trying to do to ensure safety for everybody.
In Billings, Haley Monaco, MTN News.
Thank you, Haley, for doing a great job following that incident. She was there all weekend as well.
Yeah, she was.
A lot of work, a lot of details into that. Also, another story developing today, some wintry weather. So when you go out today, you got to be aware.
Absolutely. Happy spring, by the way.
And happy spring, Miller.
first full day of spring, and of course, we've got snow to start it off with. Yeah, we do have some snow out there still falling here in Billings. Luckily, the road's warm enough to where we're not seeing a lot of it stick. Still could see some slick roads out there and the possibility of some patchy fog. So just be careful during your morning commute. Take care of yourself, the folks driving next to you, and watch out for pedestrians, especially the kiddos walking to the bus stop or to school this morning. Take a step back in time yesterday, a good 10 degrees cooler than average. Our high only of 41. Don't think we're going to get that today. I think we're going to be cooler than that. Overnight low of 23, a good 5 degrees below the norm as well. Top gust yesterday of 24. We did have some snow falling last night, about 3/10 of an inch officially at the airport, but still our moisture totals and our snow totals still in the hole for the month and for the year. Let's take a look at temperatures out there right now, sitting at 24 at the airport with the snow coming down. Feels like 18. Mentioned patchy fog. Well, look at our dew point at 22 degrees, close to our actual temperature of 24 degrees. That means, yeah, there's a chance because those temperatures are close to see some fog out there this morning. Temperatures this morning mainly in the 20s as we wake up. We're looking at 20s and 30s for the highs today. The snow will taper off west to east, but we still have the possibility of more rain and snow in the forecast as we head toward the weekend. We'll take a look at that coming up here in just a bit.
All righty, Miller, thank you so much. We'll be back with him in a few. And at the Capitol on Monday, an hours-long hearing in the House Judiciary Committee about Senate Bill 99. That measure seeks to ban some types of gender-affirming care for transgender youth in Montana. Republican Senator from Kalispell, John Fuller, is sponsoring this bill.
The freedom to make decisions does not allow us to determine the consequences of those decisions.
The bill threatens healthcare providers with the loss of their licenses for a year if they treat minors with puberty blockers, hormones, or surgery. It would impact mental health care for transgender youth as well by banning providers at psychiatric hospitals that receive taxpayer funding from promoting or advocating to use these treatments for gender dysphoria. That violation would also lead to a 1-year license suspension. Last week, Minority Leader Abbott moved to re-refer SB 99 from House Judiciary to House Health and Human Services Committee, but that failed on party lines.
The truth is that this bill prohibits health care that is evidence-based, best practice health care, and is endorsed by all the major U.S. medical organizations.
The measure passed out of the Senate with the support of the supermajority GOP and is now moving through the House. There was no vote on Monday. Its next hearing is not yet scheduled. Also happening this session, lawmakers hope to pass legislation to make drug testing kits legal. Despite being available in grocery stores and pharmacies all over the state, having drug tests on hand can actually land somebody a possession charge. It's not widely enforced. We checked with local law enforcement, and there's been 0 citations related to testing here in Yellowstone County. But supporters of the bill say with the rise of fentanyl overdoses, making tests officially legal is imperative.
Enabling people to possess the strips without being subject to criminal penalties will allow people access to an easy-to-administer and affordable means to determine if their drugs have been adulterated with fentanyl.
The bill is currently awaiting approval in the Senate after making it through the House with unanimous support. And Billings Representative Carrie Seekins-Crow is seeking to limit marijuana advertising across the state. She's sponsoring a bill to prohibit dispensaries from promoting their business or brand in print, over TV and radio, or using a billboard. Seekins-Crow argues ads have gone beyond what was intended when the legislature set regulations on recreational dispensaries. But her bill is drawing opposition from marijuana businesses and the State Newspaper Association.
That's what we do, is we say this is how we want this to look. We have regulated this industry, and this is part of the regulations with this. What you have then is a cycle of the law getting stricter, and the people who getting around it keep getting around it, and the people who are compliant are just consistently suffering the consequences of stricter laws.
The Senate Business, Labor, and Economic Affairs Committee heard testimony on the bill yesterday, but did not take any action. Construction crews continue putting back the pieces in local communities damaged by last summer's flooding. And soon work will begin on one of the biggest projects, restoring the road to the Stillwater mine outside of Columbus. Right now, there's a slight holdup, but as Q2's Charlie Kleps learns, the local company hired to do that job is ready to get started.
I'm on the property of Stillwater Excavating, located just outside of Columbus. Their bid to repair the Stillwater Mine Road after last summer's flood was just recently accepted. And while the construction process hasn't begun quite yet, they're looking forward to helping rebuild their community.
I myself have been on the mine site for 38 years.
Don Beer has lived in Columbus since 1985, so he knows just how important the Stillwater mine is.
I've watched that mine go from just its very beginnings to what it is today, and it's a pretty important entity for this community to keep Stillwater County growing and alive.
So when his company's bid was selected to fix the Stillwater Mine Road that was swept out during the flood, Beer was thrilled.
There's a lot of use up that road. You know, you've got Woodbine Campground above that, and that's a high use area for the Forest Service and for campers and hikers and everything else. So once that's opened back up, that'll be a pretty good feeling.
Beer's bid will reroute the river back to its original flow, which means they're on a deadline to beat this spring's high water season.
We need to get that protected and done, because our fear is if we do nothing before high water, it's going to continue to erode that, and this project is going to become bigger.
Stillwater County Commissioner Tyrell Hamilton says the major holdup right now is approval from FEMA, who are providing 75% of the funding and have some environmental concerns.
We're waiting until we have 100% confirmation until we cut our contractor loose, because we don't want to have the residents of Stillwater County on the hook for a project because we took a step too early.
Hamilton hopes construction can start in the next couple weeks. It'll be a return to normalcy for a community that needs it.
That community was hard hit during the flood. We're trying to do everything that we can to restore that access as quickly as possible.
It's great to be able to get in there and help these guys get some of their properties back. we're going to try to help those folks out as much as we can while we're doing the job.
In Stillwater County, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
Thanks, Charlie, for following that. And new this morning, former President Donald Trump is not expected to be indicted today, despite his own claims on social media. Still, preparations are underway to seal off Manhattan criminal court, protecting those inside from potential protests and when an arrest does happen, if and when an arrest does happen. A grand jury is investigating whether Trump falsified business records linked to a hush money payment to former porn star Stormy Daniels. The United States is authorizing hundreds of millions of dollars more in military aid for Ukraine. That announcement from the Biden administration came on the same day China's president began his high-profile trip to Russia. CBS's Nicole D'Antonio has more.
China's President Xi Jinping and Russia's President Vladimir Putin called each other dear friends as they began a series of face-to-face meetings at the Kremlin Monday. China's leader is expected to use the high-profile visit to renew calls for a ceasefire in Ukraine. But U.S. officials say any agreement must also call for the removal of Russian forces from Ukrainian territory.
The world should not be fooled by any tactical move by Russia, aided by China or any other country, to freeze the war on its terms without any viable pathway to restore Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The U.S. State Department announced another $350 million in weapons and equipment to Ukraine, saying the U.S. will continue to stand by the besieged country as long as it takes.
The meetings between Xi and Putin come just days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin for the deportation and abduction of children from Ukraine to Russia.
That President Xi is traveling to Russia days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for President Putin suggests that China feels no responsibility to hold the Kremlin accountable for the atrocities committed in Ukraine.
The Kremlin doesn't recognize the ICC's jurisdiction, and Russia's investigative committee said it is opening a criminal case against a prosecutor and 3 judges of the ICC over the arrest warrants. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, the White House.
China, the U.S., and Ukraine also don't recognize the ICC, but the court's announcement still affects Putin's international standing. And now we've got a great story out of Kalispell. The Montana Hope Project grants a young boy's wish, providing him a chance to explore all the treasures state has to offer. Check out the moment Dean Peterman got to sit in his brand new electric all-terrain wheelchair. He and his family love to hunt and fish and get outside, but that wasn't always easy for Dean. Much of the outdoors still being less than accessible, but thanks to the Montana Hope Project, a group that grants the wishes of Montana kids with terminal, critical, or chronic illnesses, Dean will be able to go just about anywhere and do just about anything.
I'm so excited for this new wheelchair because it's electric. Yeah, right, and I could go off-roading.
We just live in a beautiful place that Dean has had a hard time accessing, and we've been carrying him, and his stepdad and I have climbed this mountain behind us with carrying him in his wheelchair, and this chair just gives him an opportunity to be independent and be with his friends, and we're just very thankful for that opportunity.
The Montana Hope Project has helped fulfill the wishes of more than 500 kids across the state.